and welcome to Subjective Thoughts. And our comic for today is Terror Inc. Apocalypse Soon, issue 4 by Max. Now there is fighting, killing, violence, limb tearing, a bit of shooting, a bit of blood, and a virus in this one. So if you are in any way squeamish, you have been warned. Also, spoilers. Alright, here's the team. So, when we left off Mr. Terror in issue 3, he, along with Mrs. Primo, Mabdullah, Hafifa, and his men, went down to the cave where the Dragon Lord was, not encased, chained in, and Mr. Terror offered him a deal. He helps them get the cure, and then he'll be, get a whole day ahead to run away. Of course, the Dragon Lord did not want such a deal, and sent his snakes that are attached to him, and they tore off Mr. Terror's head. So, now in the start of this one, the Dragon Lord is attacking Mr. Terror. He's ripping his body with the snakes, telling him, "This time I'll rip you into such tiny pieces that even you won't be able to recreate yourself again." While he does that, Mrs. Primo tells Abdullah and his other two men, "Come on, we need to get out of here." So they start running towards the exit. They're running. The Dragon Lord is starting to go after them now. As they try to get out of the cave, as they get out of the cave, Mrs. Primo tells Abdullah, "This is all part of Mr. Terror's plan." Now, Abdullah, of course, doesn't know about Mr. Terror's curse and everything. He's like, Mr. Terror's dead now. And she tells him it was much better than his last plan with the Rottweilers. I would have liked to read about that mission. Yes, they almost get out of the cave, but then Mr. Terror's body still goes after them. But because he doesn't have a head, he just grabs at everything. And then the Dragon's Lord like, "Oh, there's a better plan. I'll let you, tear the limbs off your friends. I'll take pleasure in you wearing the face of your woman, Mrs. Primo." He runs ahead of them, of Mrs. Primo and Mabdullah, the Dragon Lord, I mean. Mabdullah tells Mrs. Primo to quickly to run ahead of him. He's like, "Where's Hafifa?" And she tells him, "I sent him to get my bag from the car." So she runs ahead. Abdullah goes to those the VX gas things. He throws a container and then shoots it so it would hit Mr. Terror's body. She runs out, Mrs. Primo, then she's like standing there waiting. "Come on, Abdullah." He runs out as well. He's slightly coughing. Hafifa arrives with Mrs. Primo's bag. And he tells her, "Here you are, Mrs. Primo." She said, "Oh, you didn't look inside?" And he tells her, "I ran as fast as I could. Inside, there's a head." So again, this was all a plan, so Mr. Terror planned in advance. She throws the head into the cave. There's sitting there, Mrs. Primo sitting on a rock looking at the cave entrance. And Abdullah and Hafifa are talking amongst themselves. Hafifa said, "She's like my wife, she's gonna die here too, from grief about Mr. Terror." And then suddenly Agent Pfeiffer arrives, or Pfeiffer. Yeah, so he gave Mrs. Primo a watch with a GPS in it, but it turned off, but not before they got a grip on the general location. So he wants to shoot Abdullah. Abdullah's a wanted man. He said, "No, Agent Pfeiffer, these are our friends. They're friends." And he's like, and then she tells him, this is all part of Mr. Terror's plan. And they start to argue, but then Mr. Terror comes out of the cave. Slightly, well, from the nerve gas. He's not in the best condition. He's stuttering a lot. Oh, and also, what he did, what Mr. Terror did, he put. Also, I think not her watch. I think he meant Mrs. Primrose watch. He put it in his head, I think, or he also had one. But he put it in his head because he knew that the Dragon Lord was gonna let the snakes eat his head. So they ate the tracker. So they ripped the head and ate it. So now they have a way to track the Dragon Lord. Anyway, we go. We get a flashback then. After that, he tells him. Mr. Terror comes out, and then we get a flashback. It's the what was it? 14th century. Just a second. Come on. Ah, there we go. Yeah. Okay. There we go. What was it? Yeah, Persia, 13th century. Okay. It's the palace of the. Well, then he was the Dragon King. He wasn't the Dragon Lord. So we got little Abin when he was a baby, crying on the body of I assume a wet nurse, and I'm just gonna call him Dragon Lord. Dragon Lord yelling, someone shut him up, and he's got an advisor with him, and a woman who I presume is what was back then a nanny, probably. Yeah, she tells him, well, my king, I believe Prince Abin has soiled himself. And he says, well, change his diaper. What, are you afraid more of a little baby than of me? And then the advisor says, my king, no, she's afraid of the sickness. And yes, Abin has this power of making people sick. And they even burned his excrement because one time it poisoned the river along the I suppose kingdom where he lived. So anyways, then the Dragon Lord looks at his son as he's lying there crying, and that's when he got the idea to use him for the plague. Then we go back to present day. Abin is in a airport. Everyone's dead around him because of his plague power, which apparently he can't control. So yeah, like father, like son, but differently. So he's talking to the dead body that's next to him, telling how after that he'd been locked up in a cage for 15 years, and his father used him, and his father locked him in a cage. Then he got his scientists. Did they have? I assume they had. Did they have science people in the 14th century? But probably had something like that, and magicians and everything to. Because he decided, you know what, I'm going to use you to make a plague on the world. But first he needed a cure. And then these magicians and scientists wizards I should say, discovered that the cure is in his urine. So he collected enough of the cure. And Abin says that these were happier times with him and his father, that he had conversations with his father, and he let him pick the best in the harem. Which I think Abin looks about like 14, 15. Different times. But then after he got enough of his urine, enough for the cure, to have a supply, I take it, he dumped him down the hole until those people, like I think the ones from the Mossad dug him. Oh, no, not from the Mossad. Anyways, until some of those people dug him up, finally. And he's like, at least they dug him up and then tried to kill him. But he says with a tear in his eye, at least they tried to kill me. So yeah, it's that's why the whole concept of being immortal doesn't seem so great now, does it? Because he couldn't even fucking die. He's just laying there, just sitting staring into nothingness. Just to imagine that. That's horrid. Yes, anyway, but then his father appears as he stands up in the airport, and the announcer says the airport's shut down. No shit. He approaches his son and he's like, "Oh, my son, I missed you so." And he's like, "Really, you'll put me in that hole, father." And he said, "Well, I've been in a similar predicament, son, but now things are gonna be different. Well, we'll control it all, you and I. How about this time 50-50?" Abin doesn't take it. Obviously doesn't agree. He starts using his plague power on his father, and he explains to him that the scientist told him how the plague works. So it inflammates the tissues, the glands, until let me read you the explanation. Cause, okay, what did he say? Okay. There we go. It attacks your glands. It causes them to swell till they burst, and blood and pus ooze out. And then, and then turns the flesh black and smells awful, and then you vomit blood, and, well, obviously then you die. So yeah, he uses his power even more until his father's not really gonna die. He's also immortal, but yeah, he's laying there. Then it's 20 minutes later. Mr. Terror, Mrs. Primo, Abdullah, and I think Agent Pfeiffer come along. And they look at him, and I think it was Mrs. Primo said, "Well, that's it. Is he dead?" And Mr. Terror says, "I've done worse to him, and he'll grow back." Then he tells them all, and then Abdullah wants to go with them, and Mr. Terror says, "No, you have a family. You're going home." Then we move on to Abin. I think it says an hour later or something. Or maybe it didn't. I think maybe. Anyway, he's on the highway. And he's like, who's going to take me, why can't I get anyone to get me out of here? Before that, when he was in the airport, he said, I'm much more nihilist. I'm a nihilist, unlike my father. Yeah, no shit. And he says that who's gonna, help me here. Kid, who's gonna help you if you're gonna fucking kill everyone? Mr. Terror arrives. And confronts him. And Abin says, even though you have a different body, I still recognize that it's you. And he's like, oh, come on, kid. You either tell me what the cure is, or I'm going to eat your brain and find out like that. Either way, I will do it. But he's using his powers, and although Mr. Terror's curse is getting him new body parts from around, those are not healthy body parts. They're not poison. They're all infected with the plague, and Mr. Terror can't move. And it's like, oh shit, what now? But then Abdullah arrives. He takes off. He's in a hazmat suit. I forgot to say when they all arrive. So apparently Abin could have killed the scientists even though they had the hazmat suits. It didn't matter. He could still do that to them. So the suits won't protect anyone. And he tells that to Abdullah. And Mr. Terror tells Abdullah, get out of here. You're not safe. And Abin tells him there's nothing you can do. You're nothing. And then Abdullah takes off the helmet of the hazmat suit and says, "But I am healthy." But basically, Abdullah sacrifices himself. And then Abin says, "Yeah, for like 3 seconds," and he always got blisters. And Mr. Terror's looking at him and said, "Abdullah, you sacrificing son of a bitch." and then his tentacles come out, and suddenly he punches Abin and says 3 seconds is all I need, as he has Mabdullah's head. Oh yeah, I think before that in the airport, Mabdullah's like, I am safe, but what about my family? So yeah, he punches the Abin, and then it's 1 week later in Los Angeles. Mr. Terror and Mrs. Primo are on the rooftop of there's someone's I think someone's house at a party. So they took all the urine they needed from Abin, and they're sending the cures all over. Mrs. Primo, like, you can find cures in the strangest of places. And Mr. Terror's like, well, can we not talk about it, Mrs. Primo? You know, we're here on our romantic get a celebration. And then she tells him, oh, you know, I got a cure for you, darling. And he says, oh, is it, is it some kind of talisman to cure me out of being a rotting living corpse? And then she gives him, I suppose she's holding some kind of bag, though at first it looks more like a napkin or a handkerchief. And he opens it or unfolds it, and inside there's deodorant. And he's like, hardy har har, Mrs. Primo. And then we go 500 years later, and it's 1 second. Where was it? It's like the same mountains even. 1 moment. Was it? Yeah. Yeah, Los Angeles. It was right. Okay. Where was it? The Zagor's Mountains. I think it was in Iran somewhere. Yeah, okay. As it's 500 years later, the Dragon Lord is telling his son some kind of story. And but then he starts to get blisters, and he tells him, wait, I haven't gotten to the part how I raised the army of the dead. And Abin says, but you have told me already, father, and then you let your snake eat my head. And the Dragon Lord falls to the side from a sitting position. One of his snakes falls with blisters all over. And he says, well, we have sadly... Sadly said, well, we have confirmed that unfortunately you cannot die from boredom. And that is it, the end. Okay, first the cover. Now, as I've already said in the other videos, I really love these covers, and that I wish that the fights were as cool as on these covers. Look at him fighting those snakes. I mean, he does that in the comic, but I wish it, looked like this. And not like how it is. Okay, so... Oh, yeah, and for the flashback, there's also different art. Oh, and look, finally, they used a different picture here. Finally. Because the last 3 issues, they used the same fucking one. Oh, look, fish. Or sardines. Okay... We got some gore now. He's ripping Mr. Terror. There we go. Look at that. There's Mabdullah and Mrs. Primo. Let me show you maybe the flashback art. I think that would be as Mr. Terror coming out of the cave. Let me show you the flashback card's done by someone else, I'm certain. I mean, look, the style is different. At least it looks that way. I don't know, the artist couldn't be bothered with drawing backgrounds then. Wait. Because they're not even in a room. I mean, you assume the kid would be in a room. There's baby Abin. There's younger Dragon Lord. I don't know how, the rate of aging that the Dragon Lord has. And there's our little nihilistic bastard. Yeah, I don't know, because you see him later on, he's got a beard, but in 500 years, Albin doesn't look like he grew a day. He got older by a day, even. So, I don't know. Is it going to take... How many centuries is it going to take Albin to become a full-grown adult? Because since the 14th century, he's only grown into a teenager. At least I presume. I don't know, but based on his look, I don't think he's older than a teen. Right, so this was the conclusion to the story. Yeah, I wish there was more at least showing how they got the cure out of Abin. Maybe Mr. Terror did just eat his brain to get it. I mean, the kid's gonna grow a new one. And then they figured out they just need the urine sample, or a lot of his urine, and then they can cure it. Oh, that's what Mrs. Preble does. She first tells him about how in some century they used to use nuns' urine to cure certain diseases. Yeah, well, where was I? Yeah, so yeah, I wish it was shown more of that. You know, at least and you know how they're thrown back into another cave or underground again or something. I wish there was more of that. And maybe they at least see a little, you know, what the world did after that to heal. As they had to send a lot of vaccines, and how did they explain that? And, you know, did Mr. Terror get in trouble? You know, did he have problems after that? And then the ending, you know, where it's like 500 years later, and you see them both in that underground, maybe not cave, but they were thrown somewhere underground. And it's just, yeah, it's so kind of random, because obviously Mrs. Pribble's fucking long dead. And you know, where's Mr. Terror? Is he still around? Because the desert looks just like the plain old desert. So yeah, that's kind of, I don't know, I wish there was at least, I don't know, a showing of Mr. Terror. At least to see if he's still around. But yeah, it is what it is. It was not a bad ending. At least there was some action, some fighting. Abin turned out to be a nihilistic little shit. But overall, this whole story wasn't as good as the second series story. The pacing was, I felt too fast in this. I already complained about it before, but yeah, the pacing was too fast. And I certainly did not like the art style that much. I wish it was the art style from the second series. I think that would have improved it for me, because at least it would be that art style, that look. I didn't like this look as much. Yeah, and yeah, overall, the general stories, okay, you got as Mr. Gray told me, the cliche of virus. Fair enough. And you got an old enemy of Mr. Terror. But I will say it does feel a little bit too much like a repeat. I get it, this is a different kind of enemy for Mr. Well, the Talita wasn't originally an enemy, but it's a different kind. But still, it's a little bit of the same, you know? And granted, with Talita, he didn't know, but this one he did know. And it's just, you know, you'd figure maybe you should check on the bastard at least, or remember where he is and do something about that. And you know, this whole thing of him having a kid as well out of fucking nowhere also is, you know, like, it was, okay, so he had Abin, right? Does that mean that it's incredibly difficult for an immortal, whatever he is, to produce a child? I mean, I mean, obviously Abin's mother survived at least long enough to give birth to him. Does that mean that he only developed these powers later? And why did he develop them? Is it because of his father being immortal and having the snakes come out of him? Why snakes? That's also a little bit random. Yeah, I wish there was something a little bit differently done. If I did a second series to Mr. Terror, I would have made a series where he tried to find a cure for himself. That might be a little bit cliche as well, but I would have had him, I don't know, maybe try to find a way to, get rid of the curse and then discovering that there's really no way to do it. And maybe having to come to terms with that, and then you see him in the future with Mrs. Primmo being an old lady. It's something like that. That's what I would do. But yeah, this feels like it was just. I don't know. Maybe there was. Because I did say in the first issue, over here there's a mistake. It says 1 of 4 on the first issue. So I wonder if there was supposed to be 5 of these issues. They were gonna, broaden the story a bit. But they either, I don't know, decided to not, or if it was just a mistake. Because maybe there was supposed to be more in here. I feel like 5 issues might have helped us a little bit. Because, yeah, it's not the best story, and it feels like a little bit wasted. Because, they could have dived more into Mr. Terror's past, maybe, or him trying to find a cure for himself, or to figure out this curse. Yeah, I don't know. No, I feel like they should have gone that direction. And again, the art that doesn't help it at all. But I'm glad at least the covers still stayed the same quality. The covers are fantastic. Kind of mask the fact that inside it's not as fantastic. Yeah, it is what it is. Overall, it's entertaining, at least. At least that, but yeah, it's not as good. And if you really liked how Mr. Terror was in the second series, I don't think this is gonna be as great as as that one. Granted, I still haven't read the first series of Mr. Terror. I do wonder how he was originally. But I do love the second Terror Inc. series. And I will. But this one, yeah. I'm a bit disappointed. So, that is it. Let me think that I get to include something. Oh yeah, I still don't know. I still wish I knew Mrs. Primmo was married before. And where is Mr. Primmo? Or maybe he died, or maybe she killed him. That also, I wish there was a bit of that too. And not as important, obviously. Maybe it doesn't even need to be explored, but still. Alright. So that is it, folks. Let me know what you thought of Terror Inc. Apocalypse Now if you've read it. And remember, collect what you're passionate about and share it on YouTube. Bye!